You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans! Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am Jacob Valk, and at the end of this show, you're going to get the interview that I did with Brandon Sneed, the author of the book about Lincoln Riley. Really fun talking to him. He's a really nice guy. Also, at 6 p.m. tonight, you're going to get my Brooklyn Nets off-season preview. I promise you that. But I have to start with the NBA playoffs, featuring the teams that are still in it and one team that is no longer in it because the Indiana Pacers were eliminated. They did get swept. I'll get to them a little later on. But I have to start with Bucks Magic. The one thing you have to say about the Magic in this series is they've been a much better opponent for the Bucks than I think anyone thought they'd be. Games 2 and 3 were blowouts, I get that. But Game 1, they ended up winning. And this game yesterday was really close for 3 quarters. The Bucks were only up by 3 headed into the fourth quarter. The Magic had a really good interior game. Nikola Vujovic has been great in these playoffs. Khem Birch had a really good game. I like him. Good rebounding center. Little undersized, but he gets the job done. But then in the fourth quarter, the Bucks came alive. Chris Middleton, who was invisible for the first 3 quarters of that game. He only had 3 points in the first 3 quarters, dropped 18 in the fourth quarter. I don't mind you no-showing for the first 3 quarters if you're going to come alive in the fourth quarter. That's really, really impressive. I mean, the Bucks shot the ball really well in this game. Middleton finished 4 for 7 from beyond the arc. Wesley Matthews, 4 for 6 from beyond the arc. Giannis did Giannis things. Kyle Korver had a good game. Dante DiVincenzo got to the line pretty well. So did George Hill. At the end of the day, the Bucks are just better than the Magic. That's what this game boiled down to. In close games, it's usually the team with more talent that pulls away with it. Sometimes, the team with less talent wins. No question. But more often than not, it's the team with more talent. The Bucks are just better. Some other players who caught my eye for the Magic, Markelle Fultz, who I really like. It's good to see him getting his NBA career back on track. Terrence Ross has had a good series. Evan Fournier shot the ball pretty well. Gary Clark actually had a really good game. 4 for 8 from beyond the arc. He was a really good stretch 4. Vujovic drew some attention. He kicked it out to Gary Clark and he hit threes. That's impressive. It's kind of interesting to think what this series would be if the Magic were fully healthy, if they had Mo Bamba, if they had John Isaac, if they had Michael Carter-Williams, if they had Aaron Gordon. Would the Bucks still be up 3-1? They probably would be, but I guarantee you there wouldn't be any double-digit losses. The scores of these games are not representative of how well the Magic have played. There are moral victories when you're the 8 seed. I give Steve Clifford credit. He's done a really good job with this team. Moving on now to Rockets Thunder. And this is what the Thunder can do when they're all clicking. Dennis Schroeder, my 6th man of the year, goes off for 30 points. The high man for the Thunder. Chris Paul with 26 points. Luguentz-Dort making himself known defensively. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander with 18 and 12, double-double. Steven Adams dominating the interior as he's done this whole series. This is what the Thunder can do. They're a really good team right now. Billy Donovan has done a great job with this team. And we all saw the clip afterwards of James Harden knocking down the hand sanitizer. He's ticked off. Hey, I don't blame him. He drops a double-double, 32 points and 15 rebounds. And he still loses? I mean, come on. This was the quintessential Rockets game. All offense, no defense. The Rockets hit 45% of their field goals, 40% of their three-pointers. But the Thunder hit 49% of their field goals. They got to the free throw line 28 times. They sliced and diced this really bad Rockets defense. That's been a big talking point for the Rockets. They have to tighten up defensively, and Mike D'Antoni knows it. If they don't tighten up defensively, they're probably going home. This is a really good Thunder team that's coached really, really well. They have scorers. They have really good defenders. This is a really, really good team. And make no mistake about it, Game 5 on Wednesday, tomorrow, is going to be really important. I think it's highly unlikely that any team, whether it's the Rockets who win or the Thunder who win, is going to lose 2 straight. Whoever wins Game 5 is going to win this series. Moving on now to Pacers Heat. It's really incredible how great the Heat were defensively in this game. They were really good defensively this whole series, but they put it on overdrive in this game. Malcolm Brogdon, absolutely anemic, 5 for 16 from the field. He only had 13 points. Justin Holiday, non-existent. He plays 38 minutes. And he only scores 3 points. 1 for 5 from the field. 1 for 4 from beyond the arc. Fantastic job by the Heat. Yeah, TJ Warren, Miles Turner, and Victor Oladipo each had over 20 points. Miles Turner had a double-double. But you can live with that if you're shutting down Malcolm Brogdon. You can live with that if you only give up 3 bench points. Doug McDermott hit a 3. That was all the bench production the Pacers got in this game. And you compare that to a Heat bench that saw Tyler Hero drop 16, Kelly Olynyk drop 11, Kendrick Nunn finally gets into the series, scores 7 points in 14 minutes. It was really surprising to me to not see him for this whole playoff series, with the exception of yesterday. But the Heat swept the Pacers without one of their better players, without a Rookie of the Year finalist. That's really, really impressive. Great job by the Heat in this game. Goran Dragic dropping 23 points. He's been great this whole series. I understand 1 for 6 from beyond the arc, but you can live with that when you shoot 10 for 21 from the field. Bam Adebayo, 14 and 19. Absolutely incredible. He's turning into a star right before our eyes. Jimmy Butler, non-existent offensively, but really good defensively. I give Butler credit. And now the Heat get to rest up and prepare to face a stacked Bucks team. I think the Bucks are going to win that series, but the Heat will make them work. Just like the Magic are making the Bucks work, the Heat are going to make the Bucks work. The Heat are just going to do it better. The last NBA game from yesterday was Lakers-Blazers. Obviously, yesterday being Kobe Bryant Day, 8/24. A little extra meaning there. And let me tell you, Kobe was guiding some of those shots. The Lakers couldn't miss. 56% from the field. 44% from beyond the arc. LeBron, double-double. Anthony Davis, an off game by his standards, but he still had 18 points. What really impressed me about this game for the Lakers is the contribution they got from their non-stars. KCP with 12, Danny Green with 14, Dwight Howard with 13, Kyle Kuzma, my boy, with 18. If the Lakers can get that type of production consistently, watch out. As for the Blazers, they played really well offensively. They're another team that saw their stars underperform. I mean, LeBron didn't underperform, but Anthony Davis did. Damian Lillard only dropping 11 points on 9 shots. That's absolutely terrible. Damian Lillard attempted the 5th most shots out of any Trailblazer in this game. I mean, look, the Lakers did a good job of forcing the ball out of his hands, but you've got to do better than that if you're Terry Stotts. You've got to free him up somehow. Damian Lillard cannot only take 9 shots. He cannot only take 2 threes. That doesn't work for me. Putrid game by Stotts. CJ McCollum, okay game. I mean, he had the same amount of points as Anthony Davis with 18. By his standards, I really don't like it, but it's okay. McCollum's not at the Davis level, so I can't go crazy over it. Yusuf Nurkic played really well, 20 and 13, double-double. Melo has been playing well this whole series. Hassan Whiteside played pretty well. Gary Trent played well. Mario Hezonja, Wenyen Gabriel. The Blazers got good production from their depth. They just needed Lillard and McCollum to do more. That was a bad job by Terry Stotts. The Trailblazers are only going to go as far as Damian Lillard takes them. If Lillard has another game like he did yesterday, that's it. Forget about it. The Trailblazers are gone. And just one other thing before I move to tonight's games. I can already hear the LeBron haters. This is a bad Trailblazers team. They finished with an under 500 record. They never should have been here in the first place. Of course the Lakers are going to win, blah, blah, blah. No. No. You can't do that. You can't go from saying that this is a must-win series for LeBron to keep his legacy intact, which was complete nonsense, and then not give him credit when he wins that series. Would it have been bad if he lost to the 8th seed, an inferior Trailblazers team? Yes, but it doesn't take a whole hell of a lot away from LeBron's legacy. Every great player has suffered playoff upsets. Kobe and Shaq losing to the inferior Pistons team in 2004. Dirk Nowitzki losing to the 8th seed Golden State Warriors. It happens. It doesn't take away a lot from his legacy. And then when LeBron comes within one win of beating the Blazers, you're not going to give him credit because they're a bad team? There are a lot of people that just look to tear this guy down, and I don't get it. Respect his greatness. I'm not a LeBron stan by any stretch, but I'm definitely not a LeBron hater. I respect LeBron. He's on my NBA Mount Rushmore. In answer to your next question, my Mount Rushmore is LeBron, Kobe, Kareem, and MJ. That was done in inverse order. Just respect his greatness. Stop trying to tear him down. I don't get it. I really don't understand it. Alright, now it's time to talk about tonight's games. And I'll start with Jazz Nuggets. For the Jazz, I'd really like them to get Joe Ingles going. Game 4 was dominated by Donovan Mitchell, Jordan Clarkson, Rudy Gobert, and Mike Conley. Ingles was playing well in the early part of this series, games 1 and 2. But then when Conley came back, he took a back seat. Let Joe Ingles shoot. He's only attempted 4 threes in these past 2 games. This is a guy who hit 40% of his three-pointers this year. One of the best three-point shooters in the NBA. I really want the Jazz to get him going. As for the Nuggets, they need to get Paul Millsap going. We've been hearing a lot about how bad Paul George has been. Look, I understand that Millsap isn't the second best player on the Nuggets. It's either Jokic or Murray, depending on who you have at number 1. But Paul Millsap was signed to be a guy to help the Nuggets in the playoffs. He has not done that. The Nuggets need to get him and Michael Porter Jr. going. Michael Porter Jr., really good in the early part of this series, games 1 and 2, then games 3 and 4 hit, and Michael Porter's only scored 16 points. That doesn't work for me. Both of these teams need to get their guys going. The Jazz need to get Joe Ingles going. The Nuggets need to get Paul Millsap and Michael Porter Jr. going. MPJ is more important than Millsap, for whatever it's worth. Moving on now to Mavericks Clippers. And do I really need to say any more than Luka? Okay, maybe you think I'm talking about Garza. Doncic. That's it. He's shown that he can win a playoff game by himself. Porzingis is going to be a game-time decision. And look, He'll obviously help the Mavericks, but he's not a necessity. With Luka being Luka, and Tim Hardaway having a really underrated series, same thing with Trey Burke, who is going to play in this game, the Mavericks are going to be really tough to beat. Especially when you factor in the fact that Paul George is still the worst player in these playoffs. It's not Lillard. It's not McCollum. It's not Gallinari. It's Paul George. If Paul George does not show up in this game, the Clippers will lose. While I understand that Lou Williams can pick up some of that slack, he's not Paul George. And assuming Porzingis comes back and the Mavericks get their dynamic duo back together, in Doncic and Porzingis, the Clippers need to get their dynamic duo going with Kawhi and Paul George. Again, if Paul George no-shows, forget about it. The Clippers are losing this game, and I don't see Luka losing 2 straight. Alright, now it's time to move on to hockey, and the New York Islanders shutting out the Philadelphia Flyers 4-0. Semyon Varlamov pitching his second straight shutout, doing what Carter Hart did in games 3 and 4 of the Canadian series. The Islanders played great in the first and third periods. The first period, the Flyers couldn't get anything going. The Islanders' forecheck was incredible. For most of that first period, the Islanders weren't putting the puck on net a lot. Then, towards the end of the period, they ramped up the offense a little bit. So the shots on goal total for that period is a little misleading. But there was only one shot that mattered. Andy Green from the point, little bit of a screen, but it found the back of the net, and that turned into the game-winning goal. Give Andy Green a ton of credit for seizing the moment. The second period, the Islanders didn't play well. The Flyers got a lot of really good opportunities. But Varlamov just stoned him. And then, in the third period, J.G. Pageau and Anders Lee score to make it 3-0 Islanders. Alain Vigneault pulled his goalie ridiculously early, with like 8 minutes left in the game. That's something you only see in video games. I mean, I understand why he did it, but you really didn't think the Islanders were going to score an empty netter? Devon Toews shot it in from like 200 feet. The Islanders had another defenseman do that once, Rob Davidson. It was 197 feet. Toews may have beaten that. This was a fantastic game for the Islanders. They're playing the best hockey they've played all year. In fact, they're playing the best hockey they've played in a really, really long time. I mean, make no mistake about it. This is a great Islanders team. And their physical play. What did I tell you? If Ross Johnston dresses, the Flyers aren't going to try anything. And they didn't. There were only 4 penalties in the whole game. 2 from each side. Ross Johnston is slowly turning into a pretty valuable player for the Islanders in this bubble. I mean, there's really not much I can say about the Flyers. They played like garbage. Yeah, they got some offense going in the second period, but that was pretty much it. Carter Hart played well for 40 minutes, but then that was it. I mean, the Flyers need to wake up fast. They need to play with a fire under their ass for Game 2. If they don't, the Islanders are going to steamroll them again. It's just that simple. Moving on now to Stars Avalanche. And my God, do I look like an idiot for picking the Avalanche to sweep. I mean, granted, I didn't see the Grubauer injury coming, but wow. The Avalanche did not play well in this game. They scored 2 power play goals. Whoop-de-freaking do. You know what? You've got to do more than that. You've got to score on 5-on-5 play. And more than that, they had 8 power plays. Alright, you have more opportunities to get some stuff going. I mean, they were destroyed. They were out-hit. Their defense was pathetic. Their offense was pathetic. Their goaltending was pathetic. Pavel Francouz is not a money goalie. The Avalanche need Grubauer back immediately. I understand that he's sidelined indefinitely, but look, a Philip Grubauer at 2% is better than Pavel Francouz at 100%. This guy is not a money goalie. He got outplayed by Anton Khudobin. I give Khudobin credit. He made 38 saves. And the Avalanche did play really well in the first period. They outshot the Stars 20-6. But none of those opportunities were great. You know, there weren't any highlight reel saves. The biggest moments in the game happened in the second period. Midway through the second period. The Stars get a 5-on-3 for a really long time. Joe Pavelski scores, and then Radek Faksa scores, like, right after that on the 5-on-4. It ties the game. Then the Avalanche get a 5-on-3. They don't score. That right there was the turning point. The Stars had all the momentum. Radulov, playing great this playoffs, was rewarded for that by the hockey gods. He gets a crazy deflection off a Jamie Benn pass. It hit off an Avalanche stick. Then it hit off Radulov's shoulder. I mean, my God. You want to talk about puck luck. That was puck luck. And you need that in the playoffs. It's just that simple. And Esa Lindell with a really controversial goal. I don't know how you see that the puck was across the line there. That was a really bad call, in my opinion. I don't want to hear that the goal didn't matter. It did. Less than a minute left in the second period. Any momentum that the Avalanche had at that point was completely wiped out. It didn't matter on the scoreboard, but that's not the only way that a goal can really matter. The Avalanche have looked lifeless. The Stars have taken advantage of that. I give them full credit. And instead of an Avalanche sweep, we may be looking at a Stars sweep, the way things are going. Alright, now it's time to preview tonight's 2 NHL games. For the Bruins, I'm looking to the perfection line to keep their great play up. Marchand, Bergeron, and Pasternak have been great this whole playoffs. There's a reason they're called the perfection line. They have been as close to perfect as you can possibly get. That and the Bruins' second line, DeBrusk, Krejci, and Kasha, that's a great top six. If they can get that cooking, and Yaroslav Halak continues to stand on his head, the Bruins are going to win this game. As for the Lightning, there are a couple things they have to do. They have to get out to a much better start. They played like garbage in the first period. The second period, they played well, but they still didn't get the puck past the lock. But I'm focusing on the first period, because they were lifeless. Also, they have to get their big guns cooking, all at once. This piecemeal approach isn't going to work. The Bruins are too good for that. Kucherov, Point, Hedman, Killorn, Cirelli, Palat, Sergachev, Shattenkirk, Coleman, Johnson, Gord, Goodrow. I know I'm naming the whole team, but the Lightning need a complete effort here. This is a really good Bruins team. They were one win away from winning the Stanley Cup last year. I'm not saying that everyone needs to score for the Lightning. That's obviously not going to happen. But they need everyone to play a solid game. Get everyone playing the right way, and you'll win this game. Moving on now to Canucks Golden Knights. For the Canucks, can I just say that they need to score more goals? Or is that too easy? In all seriousness, they do need to generate more opportunities. They got outshot in every period, despite dominating in faceoffs, 40-23. They also got out hit. The Canucks are the better offensive team. They have more talent offensively. They need their big guns to step up. Miller, Pettersson, Horvat, Hughes, Besser, and Pearson. Those guys need to step up. If they don't, there's a pretty good chance that the Canucks could get shut out again, because their bottom six is more geared towards physical play. You can't count on them to put the puck in the back of the net. As for the Golden Knights, don't change too much. You don't need to. Play your style of hockey. You want to tell me that you should win more faceoffs? Okay, fine. But don't reinvent the wheel. They played great in Game 1. They didn't play well against the Blackhawks, but you know what? If they got all their bad play out of their system in that series, they're going to be a really tough out. There are some other sports stories to talk about, one in each sport. The first one concerns the 76ers finally firing Brett Brown. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. You know I don't like Brett Brown. I don't think he's a good coach. It's obviously the right decision in my opinion. I don't think they should go for the sexy name. I think Darvin Ham would make more sense. Lead assistant coach for the Milwaukee Bucks. I've said this before. He can design plays for Ben Simmons that are similar to the plays that the Bucks run for Giannis. They're very similar players. Giannis is better, but Ben Simmons has a similar skill set to Giannis. I understand the appeal of going with a sexy name. But unless you're going to blow things up and trade Ben Simmons, I think Darvin Ham is the right guy. They don't need to change too much. They can keep Simmons, Embiid, Harris, and Richardson. They do need to move on from Al Horford. I don't know how they're going to be able to do it, but they absolutely need to. And they need to add as many 3-and-D guys as they possibly can. That's how the Sixers will win an NBA title. hire Darvin Ham, get rid of Al Horford by any means necessary, except trading a guy like Embiid or Simmons. I've heard Matisse Thybulle. I know that's a tough pill to swallow, but to get out from Horford's contract, I feel like you have to do it. And bring in as many 3-and-D guys as you can. If you do that, the Sixers will turn into the Bucks, and they'll be set up really well for an NBA title run. Moving on to baseball now. And according to Bob Nightingale of USA Today, the Angels are receiving trade calls on Dylan Bundy. It would make a ton of sense for the Angels to trade Bundy. He's having a really good year, 3-2 with a 2.58 ERA. He's going to get a sizable bump in pay in arbitration this year. And then, after that, he's a free agent. Unless the Angels want to make another big investment in someone, they may look to trade Bundy. I mean, it would make a ton of sense. They're the worst team in the American League. They're not making the playoffs. Forget that. Yeah, trade Bundy. I don't mind that. And you may be able to get a top 15 prospect in someone's system. That would be a really good move for the Angels. On that same token, though, I don't think we're going to get a very active trade deadline this year. Too many teams are still in the mix. Every team in the National League, with the exception of the Pirates, are at least 3.5 games out of a playoff spot. I mean, in the American League, there's a little bit of a pecking order there. But it seems like we're only going to have a handful of sellers. The Tigers, Rangers, Royals, Mariners, Red Sox, Angels, and Pirates. With that comes a terrible lack of supply. There may be a lot of demand, but if there's no supply, you're not going to see a lot of trades. And I don't know how many great trade assets those teams have. Matthew Boyd, Lance Lynn, Dylan Bundy, Whit Merrifield. If that's it, that's not a very exciting trade deadline. Moving on now to hockey and the Red Wings locking up Robbie Fabry for 2 years at just under $3 million a year, 2.95 to be specific. This is a really good move for the Red Wings. Obviously, they're going with a youth movement. Fabry was squeezed out of the Blues. He was never really able to show what he could do consistently. But whenever he was on the ice, he played well. The Red Wings took a chance on him. He played well for him. 31 points in 52 games. The minus 29 stands out. He has to work on his defensive game, but at the end of the day, you're playing for the Red Wings. You're going to be a minus. Nicholas Lidstrom would be a minus on this Red Wings team. This is a good move for the Red Wings in keeping around a good young player for their rebuild. I like this move a lot. The last story concerns the Falcons cutting Jamon Brown. I understand it's not a sexy name or anything, but it does deserve to be talked about. It's a little confusing. Brown played over 500 snaps for the Falcons last year. And granted, he wasn't that good. He only had a 53.2 overall grade last year, according to Pro Football Focus. But he's a solid backup. And the Falcons are going with a youth movement on that offensive line. Jake Matthews, Matt Hennessy, Alex Mack, Chris Lindstrom, and Caleb McGarry. Matthews and Mack are veterans, but Hennessy, Lindstrom, and McGarry aren't. They could use a quality veteran backup like Brown. Also, according to OverTheCap.com, this cut doesn't save the Falcons any money. Like, literally, they just got him off the team for nothing. It didn't help their salary cap space. It didn't hurt their salary cap space. The Falcons don't have a lot of cap space. They only have just under $8.5 million, so if it was done for cap reasons, I could understand it, but I just don't get this. This is a bizarre move, and in this coronavirus climate, you need all the quality depth you can get. Alright, here's my interview with Brandon Sneed. You're listening to the Jacob Valk Show. I am Jacob Valk, and I'm fortunate enough to be joined by Brandon Sneed, the author of Sooner, The Making of a Football Coach, Lincoln Riley's Rise from West Texas to the University of Oklahoma. Brandon, how are you?
I'm doing great, Jacob. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
No, my pleasure. I'm doing great. So, what can you tell us about Riley's time at Muleshoe High School?
Yeah, well, it's this, high school in the middle of a small town in the middle of West Texas where, football is king and it's all everybody, it's everybody's social calendar revolves around football out there. And and when I say it's in the middle of nowhere, it really is in the middle of nowhere. It's about an hour from Lubbock, and it's just, surrounded by these plains of Texas that are just, they can be really inspiring and beautiful one minute, and the next minute you can almost feel like suffocated by them because there's nothing. It's like being in the middle of the ocean. Like there's nothing else out there for a long, long ways. And so, he grew up in this just loving football. And he was a really, really good quarterback. So much that, as a sophomore there, they were looking at him as possibly their starting quarterback. And he ended up hurting his shoulder, making frankly, kind of in his words, a play that was just so stupid when, a linebacker intercepted a pass of his that a receiver of his kind of blew, and he got angry and chased the guy down. This is a scrimmage, by the way, not a real game even. And he gets angry, chases the guy down, and kind of hits him with all he's got, and it dislocates his shoulder. And, he was never really quite the same quarterback after that. He still ended up being, a really, really good quarterback, led the team to the state semifinals his junior year and all that. But, he was just this stud of a quarterback who just seemed a little bit smarter than everybody else around there, but he was also just really beloved by, all the people in town. He's just a really, by all accounts, just a nice guy that everybody really liked a lot there.
All right, sounds good. So after graduating from Muleshoe, Riley spent a year as a quarterback at Texas Tech, but he didn't get into any games. However, he still loved football. He wanted to be a part of it somehow. What did Mike Leach see in Riley to put him on the coaching path?
It was a couple of things, really. It was just he saw that, he wanted to be a quarterback really bad, and he had the brains for it. And he asked lots of smart questions, and he had a really good understanding of not just how plays worked, but why they worked the ways they worked and all that. And so he just thought the guy had a chance to be a really good coach, and he knew he would never be a really good quarterback on the college level. And so that's basically what he told him, which wasn't the easiest pill for Lincoln to swallow, but it's what got him started to where he is today. And Mike Leach, he said, is just seemed like a really smart guy, Lincoln, and a good, humble guy that was willing to work hard at whatever it was he did, and he just wanted to see if he wanted to be a coach, and the rest is history.
Now, when you hear the name Mike Leach, you think of one thing and one thing only: the air raid offense. How quickly did Riley pick up the intricacies of that offense?
It sounds like pretty quickly. It was just that was why he wanted to go there as a walk-on quarterback, was specifically because of that offense. So he already had a feel for it just in high school from the sound of things, and he, really, I don't think he had any trouble understanding the offense. I think the trouble he had was his arm as a quarterback not being able to get the ball to the receivers at the right time and all that. But, as a coach, he really understood it, so well that, within, relatively short time there, he was not only working as Mike Leach's assistant, he was helping him break down game film and even contributing to creating new plays or new variations of existing plays and things like that. And so he understood it really well, really early on.
Good. That's impressive. To make that transition from player to coach that quickly and to pick up an offense like the air raid offense, which isn't an easy offense to grasp, that's really impressive, don't you think?
Yeah, and to me, it's everybody talks a lot about Lincoln's his smarts, right, and his intelligence. There's no question the dude's brilliant. But what was most impressive to me about it, especially that part of his story, and this kind of happens a lot throughout his story, but especially at that age, he's 19 years old, and to me, it wasn't even just about how smart he was as a football player and a football coach. It was just that he was mature enough to decide, all right, this is a move I got to make, and he was mature enough just as a human being to realize it was time to grow up and because being a coach, you think about how it affects you socially as a 19-year-old kid. You go from being part of the team, part of the guys, to now you're the boss, and nobody likes their boss sometimes, and you can't really fraternize with each other. So it really changed his whole life, and that's not an exaggeration. And he was, he had the courage and just the foresight to go for that, even at that young age. And so that's what was really interesting to me, even more than the football stuff, was just the human side of it. That's a big move for a kid, and he made it. And I think that was as impressive as anything else he did as a football coach.
No, I'm with you. That is really, really impressive. Talking to Brandon Sneed, the author of Sooner, The Making of a Football Coach, Lincoln Riley's rise from West Texas to the University of Oklahoma. So Riley worked his way up the totem pole to become Texas Tech's wide receivers coach. Can you lay out his impact on Danny Amendola and Michael Crabtree?
Yeah, clearly he had a big impact. It's something that he didn't talk to me a whole lot about in particular, and I wasn't able to talk to those guys directly for the book myself, but from what I've read and from what I've seen of their careers and everything else around that time, their productivity went up a lot. But of course, Lincoln's take on that is, he gives, this is what is kind of, it's great about him as a person. It can be frustrating as a writer and a reporter. He's really, really good at kind of passing the buck on a positive way, and so I remember him talking about Michael Crabtree, winning the Biletnikoff Award and things like that. And, he said, man, I've got this guy winning these awards and all that. He said, it made me feel like I was the greatest receivers coach on the planet. And then basically that's his way of saying that, it wasn't really anything that he did. It was Crabtree's talent and same with Amendola's success. And, he does that with all the players throughout his career, which, it's a mix. It's always coach and the player combination. You got to have both clicking most of the time to find that kind of success. But yeah, he just felt like he had some really, really talented guys that he just always feels, and I think this is genuine for me. He just always feels really lucky to get to work with people that have a lot of talent and ability, because I think he understands that, without that, whatever ideas he has, brilliant or not, aren't going to work. And so it's just you got to kind of always have that synthesis of good players with the good coaching.
Hey, just as talent wins over scheme in the NFL, talent can win over scheme in college football. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so. It depends on a lot of stuff, but sure.
Right.
It's college football is so interesting. It just depends on which team. So in the NFL, either side, you're going to have the best of the best. I mean, talent or no talent, they're all talented in the NFL. So, I mean, if a guy's marginally better in the NFL, it's going to make a big difference. Whereas I feel like in college, I mean, if you have one really talented guy, but the rest of the team isn't quite up to, his level, it's going to be tougher. Even especially if you're like a good quarterback playing for, a certain team, it might be tougher. It really depends. But I'm rambling. The short answer is
no. This is good. This is good. I like this.
No, I think you're right. I mean, it's tough to. It's really, yeah. I mean, yeah. Sorry, I agree with you. Yeah.
All right, good. I like that you agree with me. More people should agree with me. So let's get out of Texas now. How did Riley end up at ECU?
Well, the Texas Tech team went through just a soap opera of a year, in his words, with just a whole lot of stuff that went down that ultimately ended in Mike Leach getting fired and another coach being hired from outside the organization, and he came in and promptly fired everybody else. And so Lincoln and Ruffin McNeil in particular, but I mean, they were all kind of cut loose, and so they're just trying to figure out their next move. And Ruffin McNeil gets the job as the head coach at his alma mater, East Carolina University in Greenville. And his first call, he said, was to Lincoln. He wanted Lincoln to come be his offensive coordinator because he just thought Lincoln was capable of doing something special there. And, 5 years he spent there, that proved to be true.
No question about that. Now, ECU isn't a very big school, certainly not a football powerhouse, a school you'd think of as producing a bunch of NFLers, but they did produce a pretty good one while Riley was still there. Based on what you've told me, I'm sure Riley passed the buck to this guy, but I think it's interesting. Would you be able to describe the influence that Riley had on Dwayne Harris?
Yeah, well, Dwayne was a pretty fully formed player by the time Riley got there, because Riley got there, I think it was Dwayne going into Dwayne's senior year, and he was pretty. Dwayne wasn't too keen on Lincoln when he first arrived. I mean, he just told me, I think Lincoln might have been 26 years old at that time, and that's not much older than a college senior is, and. Coming in as offensive coordinator, going to take over this offense. Dwayne's trying to get to the NFL. He really didn't know what to think of him, and he was pretty skeptical at first, as was everybody in Greenville. And but I think I don't think Lincoln. I mean, I just think that he gave Dwayne a new offense that he could thrive in, and Dwayne made the most of it because he's a great receiver. I mean, he's fantastic. He was an amazing guy to watch. I was able to watch him play some there. I mean, it was really fun. And, I just think that was just once Dwayne got his head wrapped around that new offense, it was just kind of off to the races from there. And I think everybody just Dwayne, whether it's Dwayne or any of the other players, I just know that ECU football for those 5 years were just it was really, really fun. It was just
yes, it was.
Because ECU had been having some success going into, they had Skip Holtz, who was Lou Holtz's son, had been coaching them for a while before that, and they had won a couple of conference championships, which never happened for East Carolina. And Skip Holtz, is maybe the only Pirate football coach to ever leave because he was hired away to, basically getting a better paying job somewhere else. I think all the others have been fired. I don't want to say that with 100% certainty, but a few people have told me that, and I haven't checked every single coach over ECU football history, but at least in
why not?
I'm sorry. No, at least in my memory, so Skip Holtz did well, but I mean, their games were very grinded out, and he was kind of that old school grind the game out, control the game with the running game and defense and all that. And so Lincoln and Ruffin came in and said, look, we're going to make the game fun. We're going to put up big numbers, and we're all going to have a good time, and that's exactly what they did.
Was there ever a situation, whether it was at Texas Tech, ECU, or Oklahoma, where someone said, you know what, this guy's just a baby. He's only 20 or 30 years old. I'm not going to listen to this guy. Did that ever happen?
Not that I've been told, not that I've heard. I'm sure that there were some situations with individuals here and there, because that's going to happen. There's going to be, dumb, hotheads on every team that are going to think that about their coach, whether he's 20 years old or 60 years old. But nothing to my knowledge specifically about Lincoln. I mean, there was a lot of like joking around with him when he was at Texas Tech. I mean, some pranks being played on him, things like that. But I think, again, it's just a testament to, not just Lincoln, and it's not that I'm like trying to make Lincoln sound like Jesus or anything like that. I just found it interesting just the way he handled things. Like, I learned a lot from it. I think people would learn a lot just from seeing the way he handled different situations because, they might pull a prank on him when he was at Texas Tech, and his reaction was not, hey, I'm your coach, you need to respect me, go run some laps. It was he'd laugh, he'd laugh it off, and he wouldn't exactly be one of the guys, but he would treat him with respect instead of this authoritarian kind of like the old guard of football coaching was very, hey, you respect your coaches or else. And, he really embodied the new kind of era of coaching, which I think players need is just, hey, like, you're a person, I'm a person, we're going to have some fun, mess around. As long as the mutual respect is there, it's all good. And the way he showed respect was by not, demanding it and demanding guys fall in line or whatever. It was he was a human being about it. And I think I think I went a long way with people and just showed him he's not like, because he is a smart guy, and but he didn't, he kind of matured into learning that you still gotta just treat people like people, and he just seemed like he does a really good job of that.
Talking to Brandon Sneed, the author of Sooner, The Making of a Football Coach, Lincoln Riley's Rise from West Texas to the University of Oklahoma. So, why did Bob Stoops think that Riley could make the jump from a small school in ECU to a football powerhouse in Oklahoma?
I think that there's a few reasons. One of the bigger ones from what I've been told is, Mike Leach was just constantly in his ear, telling him, hey, like, this is a guy you need to really look at hiring. You need to hire this guy. You need to hire this guy. And but Bob Stoops already, he knew a bit about Lincoln, and he knew, that he could see the numbers they're putting up at ECU and all that. And I think especially once he spoke with him and things like that, you just, once you talk with him, you get a real sense. He's a grounded guy. He's a thoughtful guy. He's not stuck up in his head like a lot of really smart people can be. He understands people as much as he understands football a lot of times, I think. And, and plus, the air raid offense was something that Bob Stoops really wanted to bring back, or at least something like that he wanted to bring back to Oklahoma, which had fallen more into going back to kind of a power running sort of situation, which they'd had some success with, but they just weren't quite breaking open the way he wanted to. And he just, when they won their national championship, it was with an offense that Mike Leach had installed, years earlier. And they won the national championship years earlier with an offense Mike Leach installed the year before he got hired away to head coach somewhere else. And so I just think it was a lot of those things kind of fall into place. And, another factor, too, is Lincoln, he was really young, but he'd also been coaching a really long time by that point. He'd been coaching, I think, about almost 10, 11 years, which is, it's not a small amount of experience, even if you are a 30, 31-year-old guy. And so I just think that Stoops saw that he knew what he was doing, and it was somebody he wanted to bring in and take a shot on.
And it was probably the smartest thing that Bob Stoops could have done. Riley immediately re-energized that offense, and then Stoops stepped down, and Riley took over. What was the reaction among the college football world when Stoops retired and anointed Riley as his successor?
I think it was a lot of shock, but not like necessarily in a bad way. I think it was shocking and a little sad to see Bob Stoops, step away, because he was young for a head coach, and he was one of the, he'd been coaching there for a long time, had a lot of success. He'd done a lot of good things at Oklahoma, and so that was surprising to see him step away before, a lot of other coaches probably would have. And then, it's really surprising, which is an understatement. You see a guy who's 33 years old in Lincoln being named the head coach of that team, taking it over. In some ways, it's not surprising, though, because, I mean, he was successful, he was smart, and, Stoops thought a lot of him, and I think that, they're probably the odd, I don't remember exactly what negative stuff was said, if any, but, I'm sure there were the odd detractors here and there, just kind of, well, we made a mistake, we'll have to see how it goes, that kind of thing, but from what I remember anyway, from what I remember from my research and all that, it was just a lot of, this is interesting. It wasn't there wasn't a lot of too much excitement. There wasn't a lot of too much, negative stuff about it. It was just, this is going to be interesting. It might not go well, but it could be something really special. And so far, so good, I think.
No question.
Yeah, everybody wants that national championship, right? But
they'll get there.
College football playoff. Yeah, I feel like it's inevitable. I'll be really surprised if they don't at some point in the near future. But it's still, college football playoff every year since they started doing that. Back-to-back Heisman Trophy winners in Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, also number 1 overall draft picks, and also in Jalen Hurts. Sorry, left him off the Heisman thing, and then he was drafted in the second round, I believe.
By the Eagles.
Yeah, so. I don't know, man. It's been really interesting. It's been fun to watch.
Yeah, how exactly did Riley build this pipeline of great quarterbacks? He gets all these guys to transfer into Oklahoma, and immediately they become superstars. How did he do that? That's incredible.
Well, Baker was already there, actually. And Lincoln, he had tried to get Baker to go to East Carolina back when Baker was leaving Texas Tech. He found out he was leaving, and so he wanted to get him, and they had a conversation or two when Lincoln was in East Carolina, and Baker told him his plan, I'm going to go to Oklahoma and just walk on there and all that, which Lincoln thought was crazy. At the time, he told him it was crazy at the time. So Baker was already there waiting for him when he showed up, and so they knew each other a little bit.
Okay.
And then Baker still wasn't even guaranteed the starting spot when Lincoln took over. He had to earn it. And then he did. Lincoln just worked with him. They had a really good working relationship and connected well, both, as football people and people in general. And then, Baker just put in the work and made the improvements he had to make to become who he was. Baker's, he can seem like a hothead, but he's no dummy. He's a smart guy. He's an intelligent football guy. And, that's something Lincoln talked a lot about to him, is just he's really good at processing things really quickly. And so that's what helped him a lot. As far as Kyler Murray, it was just a quarterback looking at a school where he thought he could thrive, and that's where he went. And Lincoln telling him, that's a place that they could make the most of him too. Certainly didn't hurt, I'm sure. But I just, and now Jalen, it's haven't had the success he had there. So I think that Lincoln just has a way of connecting with players, quarterbacks and otherwise. Particularly quarterbacks. One, he knows what it is to be a quarterback. He knows what it is to want to be successful at that position. But he knows what it is to want to be great in general and the struggle that can come with that. And I think he just carries a lot of empathy into his relationships with all of his players. But especially, working with your quarterbacks, they're, the cornerstone of the team on offense, and all the time you got to spend working with them. And I just think he brings a lot of empathy into that. I think he brings a lot of consideration for what they think will work and what their strengths are. He's not the type of coach who's going to make you fit his style. He's going to work with your style. And I think that resonates a lot with these guys.
That's what the best coaches do. The best coaches don't find players to fit their system. They tailor their system around their players. Would you agree with that?
I think that's what works best. I think it's getting better. It's been, I feel like that's been a newer wave of things. I think that there's been some good coaches over the years who, the best ones, I think they certainly do that. But in general, it's something that I think they're learning more and more how to do. I think it's hard to do that. I think it takes a different kind of intelligence as a coach to do that. It's hard to run a whole team and have good offensive schemes and defensive schemes and prepare week to week without, and then on top of that, you got to keep managing your players and all that. So, that's something that I think a lot of people try to do. It's just really hard to do really well. And, it's something that you're right. The best coaches do find a way to do that really well.
talking to Brandon Sneed, the author of Sooner, The Making of a Football Coach, Lincoln Riley's Rise from West Texas to the University of Oklahoma. And Brandon, I'll get you out on this. Lincoln Riley, incredibly smart guy, quarterback whisperer, really young. That's what the NFL is looking for. If Riley was to make the jump to the NFL, how do you think he'd do?
I think he'd do great, same as he does here. I mean, if that's what he decided he really wanted to do, I mean, that's kind of the pattern for him is once he decides what he wants to do, I mean, he's going to figure out how to be good at it. So, yeah, I don't think he'd have any trouble finding success in the NFL if that's what he ended up wanting to do.
Do you think he's going to leave anytime soon? Let me ask you that.
No, I don't think so. I'd be really surprised. I mean, anything's possible. But you know, I'd be really, really surprised if he left anytime soon. He's got a pretty sweet setup down there.
Yes, he does.
I think it just fits him really well. I think he knows how to do a really good job with that, and I think he really likes working with that age player. I think that, I think it connects with him personally too. It's something that it's a really good fit for him, and I think he's happy doing it.
All right, Brandon. Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thank you, man. Appreciate it. This was fun.
All right, that was Brandon Sneed. His book is Sooner, The Making of a Football Coach, Lincoln Riley's Rise from West Texas to the University of Oklahoma. Thanks for listening. Here comes the outro.
Thanks for the plug, Jacob from the past. It does mean a lot. Brooklyn Nets offseason preview coming your way at 6 p.m. Eastern Time tonight. Regular episode of the Jacob Valk Show tomorrow. And every weekday after that. You know the drill. You're a good listener. Until next time, I am Jacob Valk saying that I'm very good at seeing baseballs. I just can't hit them.